Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And hey, at least for now, it's a victorious one. We'll see how the next, 8-9 games go. But for now, Arizona ends the non-conference, Shane, at 2-1. We're right where we thought we would be.
Mm-hmm.
Could be 3-0. I mean, we could.
Yeah.
So, big show ahead of us. Just want to preview before we get going on everything else. Our buddy Barrett Baker going to join us once again. Usually we don't do it so have guests so close together, but he's the best of the best as far as we're concerned.
And we've more than one person has told us, Eric, that they would be okay if Barrett was on every week with us, and we're thankful to have a good Rolodex of guests. But Barrett's able to join us again. He's got a lot of thoughts, and like I said, if he wasn't out saving lives and putting out fires with the Tucson Fire Department, he'd be a great TV analyst. So we're fortunate that he's one of our guys.
Before we get going on buy or sell, it is time for our new segment, Shane's Standout. So in a 31-10 game, Shane, who stood out to you?
Well, it'd be the second week in a row, but I think just for that catch alone, you have to put McMillan back on there. I mean, and it's a shame really that Arizona didn't score on that drive. But number 4 on SE's top 10, just a ridiculous catch. I'll say this, and it's probably something that's going to irritate fans. It's not a throw that Jayden de Laura should have made. But It was a classic Jayden de Laura throw, right in double coverage. He's trusting his receivers, and T-Mac. You know what? T-Mac is an enabler, is what he is for Jayden de Laura when he makes catches like that. But it was ridiculous. He had the fumble as well, but he get toned for that. So got to throw him in there. And then on defense, Arizona's still coming up a little short on the takeaways, but Gunnar Maldonado with that just the force of will to take that ball away I think it was late third quarter, early fourth quarter. May have been after you left, Eric. Did you leave? You left in the fourth quarter?
You really wanted to bring that up,
I
Shane?
really did.
Yes.
Because people love talking about that with you.
All right, listen, the game was an 8-10 kickoff. I left at the start. No, actually, I left a little bit midway through the fourth quarter after Arizona made it 31-3.
Yeah.
So it was about 8 minutes left. Okay. I was well on the road by the time the game ended. And you know what? I still got home at 1 o'clock. I didn't need to see UTEP score a touchdown. I don't want to hear crap. It's UTEP.
Yeah.
This is not Washington. This is not Oregon State, UCLA, or Utah coming up on the home schedule.
You must know of Fafita's appearance, as brief as it was.
I did, but I did not. You know what? I have not seen an opposing team score a touchdown in person against my team thus far this season. Now, very likely that's going to change next week when you and I go to the game against Washington. Yeah. But for now, in 2 games, when's the last time I could say that, Shane?
Yeah, so the 2 guys would have to be T-Mac and then Gunnar Maldonado. Again, we'll get more into the defense. And I'll also just mention Justin Flo, who led the team in tackles for the second straight week. So good to see him getting on the field and doing what he was supposed to do all this time. So those are my guys. I feel like we have to mention Jayden de Laura, even though he took better care of the ball, that throw, T-Mac notwithstanding. You have to consider that it's UTEP. It's UTEP, but it was better than it was. So I'll say as much crap as we give him, it's only fair to throw him in as well.
Now it's time for Buy or Sell, which is presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com and use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get yourself $5 off one of these beauties that you can see in Shane's hand if you're watching the video, or behind me, or if you're listening to the show, you've probably seen what Ice Shaker looks like. So go to iceshaker.com, use that promo code and get one, or go to fanatics.com and get yours. All right, Shane, number 1 in Buy or Sell. Arizona's performance against UTEP looked better on the scoreboard than it realistically did on the field.
Yeah, I'm actually think it's the other way around. I think, and a lot of people have tweeted this at me or X'd at me, whatever.
Whatever.
That they've Elon'd at me. Mm-hmm. That Arizona, we're waiting for them to hang 50 on someone, right? And you figure that their 2 best chances have already come and gone. NAU and UTEP. Arizona had well over 500 yards of total offense in this game. You'd think they would find a way to score more than 31 points. You had that fumble, you had the block kick, and they're doing pretty well in the red zone, but they're still, whether it's the red zone or just getting to opponent's territory, they're still leaving a few points on the board. if this team just put it all together, I think that they could put 50 on there. So 31-10 was a little underwhelming, especially when you consider, and I don't like to get too hung up in the scores, but we talked about the previous week, Northwestern, a very bad Northwestern team.
Scored 38.
Beat UTEP by a wider margin. This game it felt a lot like the NAU game, really. It was kind of ugly early, not a lot of points. It was like 14-3 at halftime, wasn't it? The same score as the NAU game. And then they blew it open in the second half. It was never really in doubt, but it felt a little underwhelming to me in terms of the score. And again, look, they covered. They won, they covered, they moved on, and that's all. I mean, I don't care about the cover part really either, except that was one of the 2 picks I got right last week, which we'll get into later. But I was a little underwhelmed by the score more so than the performance. On defense, they got bailed out a few times because UTEP they're just not a good team. They missed some open receivers. They left a guy wide open late in the game. And again, they don't have a single interception this year. Arizona does not have an interception. They have, and this was the good chance for them to get one against UTEP. They have 3 takeaways, all fumbles, no interceptions.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Shane. I'm just not visually impressed with what I've seen in person. I mean, the defense is definitely better, and we'll talk about that coming up next. Offensively, I'm just not overly enamored. Like, this offense was humming at the end of last year, and thus far, I mean, listen, they've scored, 69 points in 2 weeks against NAU and UTEP at home. They scored 24 on the road despite 5 turnovers against Mississippi State. But I am not overly impressed. It's just not overly sharp.
Yeah,
we're not seeing a consistent running game. We're not seeing, I expected fireworks, and they're just not there.
Yeah, and I will credit Jayden de Laura, like I already mentioned. This was his best game in a while, even going back to last year. There was a couple of plays, like he eluded pressure and either made a run or a good throw. There was one play, I think, that set up a touchdown early in the second half where it was like a 3rd and 4, and he scrambled for his life a couple times back and forth, and bought enough time to make a short completion to Tanner McLaughlin for a first down. Great throw. Play. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks in FBS who can make that play. And that is when Jayden de Laura is good, he's very, very good in that regard.
And there was a play that is near the end zone, near the north end zone where I sit, where de Laura was scrambling, looked like he was going to run out of bounds, and he kind of flipped it to Michael Wiley for a first down to keep the drive alive. Arizona ended up scoring. I mean, that was a phenomenal play by de Laura.
And a great communication on that play as well, because if you watch it back in slow motion, you see him kind of like signal to Wiley, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
And he did it. It was great.
It was a phenomenal play.
A luxury that he has taken advantage of, and he really should take advantage of even more, that he's got so many backs who can catch the ball.
And I know some of you are not going to appreciate the opinion that, Arizona's not as sharp. I mean, it's true. Well, like, Arizona should be... Yeah. They should be blowing these teams out 51-10 or something like that.
I feel like most fans are like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah. Okay. But let's see what matters. We'll talk about that. But let's start with number 2, Shane. It's time for us to apologize to Johnny Nansen for our constant critique and non-belief since the end of last season by yourself.
Now, I have to go back and look at the footage maybe, but I feel like maybe you were a little harder on him than I was.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay. I agree.
Now, I think we both agree that, look, if things continued into this season, then with the struggles that they've had, then we need to reevaluate, because Johnny Nansen had not been a defensive coordinator previously. He's a great recruiter, great position coach, but not a defensive coordinator. And I think, number one, getting more of his guys to the transfer portal. It's a very different looking defense and better in that regard. And bringing in Dwayne Aquina, I think were 2 keys. And I think there were probably times, I'm sure, if someone actually wants to go back and look last year, first of all, you have way too much time on your hands. But second of all, if you did and you find some scathing comments I made about Johnny Nansen, please send them my way. We were probably a little too hard on him. We get frustrated easily as fans. But I think that it's starting to come together again. I kind of feel like the defense should have been even better against UTEP. And again,
but you only got to consider 3 points scored again. I mean, you cannot consider the backups. Basically, they have given up 6 points to NAU and UTEP, as far as I'm concerned. That, when they're scoring a touchdown with a minute left, that, as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't count. I will give Johnny credit. I apologize, Johnny. And remember, Mississippi State scored 31. 7 were in overtime on a missed tackle, and others were set up by 5 turnovers.
Yeah.
So really, the defense has been excellent thus far this season. Now, We'll see what happens over the next 10 weeks, 9 games to see if they are as legitimate as we expect. With that said, hey, Johnny, good for you, and I appreciate what you've done, and thank you for proving us wrong. So I'll go
but again, three takeaways, no interceptions. That does concern me going forward.
Number 3, Shane, the Stanford game is a must-win. Simple as that.
Usually I get on your case, Eric, for this kind of early season hyperbole, but in this case, absolutely 100% buy. Look at the schedule after Stanford. 7 as of now ranked teams, and then you finish the season at ASU, which I'll tell you, I wish the Territorial Cup game was this week, because ASU is in complete shambles, and they have terrible. They have 2 months to turn it around and figure something out, which I hate because you never know. But dialing it back to the Stanford game, yes. If number one, if we're thinking bowl game, realistically, you think, okay, assume, and just for a moment, because you can't assume anything, but just for a moment, Stanford and ASU would be 2 wins. You might be able to get 2 wins somewhere else in that 7-game gauntlet. And that's it. But beyond that, I just think in terms of this program showing that it's turned a corner, when's the last time Arizona was favored on the road, or at least favored by this much on the road? They're a double-digit favorite last time I saw. Yeah. And look, they should be. They should be, because Stanford's not good and Arizona is at least an average team. And if they really have turned the corner or are about to, this is a game that they should win. I don't care about the style points. We'll get to our picks and whether they'll cover the spread later. But all I care about is that they win. I still believe that any road win is a good win. I don't care if it's ugly. I don't care how they do it. They have to find a way to win this game. Yes.
Yes. Okay. You're right. This is a must win. Now, if they lose this game, next week's show is going to be scathing. Simple as that. This is a Stanford team who just lost to Sacramento State. The coach for Stanford just came from Sacramento State. He knew what they were, and they still couldn't beat him.
They paid Sacramento State $600,000 to go beat him. Yeah.
This is a bad team. This team right now, along with ASU, are by far the 2 worst teams in the conference, and it's really not close. You got the 7 ranked teams. You got Arizona, Cal. You've got it's 8 ranked teams. Yeah. You've got Arizona and Cal in that next tier. Then you've got ASU and Stanford in that bottom tier. Yeah. I mean, it's real simple to break down the Pac-12 right now when it comes to that. You cannot lose this game. There are no excuses. I don't care if half the offense gets hurt. You should not lose to Stanford. Their only win was against a bad Hawaii team that gave up 55 to Oregon when Oregon stopped trying last week. No excuse. You beat them, and you beat them good. Listen, if you beat them by 3, just get out of there with a win. Last time, Shane, do you know the last time that Arizona beat Stanford?
Before the Rich Rod era, I believe.
It was 2009, one of the greatest regular season games I've ever witnessed. Andrew Luck.
Oh, the one in Tucson you're talking about.
Against Nick Foles. Yep.
Great game. Last time. Trevin Wade made a great play on fourth and goal to preserve Arizona's win. Rob Golden had a pick 6 in the first quarter, and Arizona rallied from 2 scores down in the fourth to come back and win. It was a great duel between Nick Foles and freshman Andrew Luck. Yeah, but I do remember. I want to say it was Rich Rod's first season. I think it was Matt Scott was the quarterback. Arizona was up 2 scores at Stanford,
blew it,
and they blew it and lost in overtime. So that was their last best chance to beat Stanford.
Now, if Arizona does not beat Stanford this weekend, they may never beat Stanford again, because who knows when these teams are ever going to play. Let's be honest. Yeah. But I believe Stanford has the longest by years win streak among Pac-12 teams against Arizona.
They went a lot of years without playing each other, though, too.
Well, they did, but still, 2009. That's 14 years ago. We have not celebrated a win over Stanford.
Well, and there a portion of that. I mean, you had the Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw era. So
sure,
they were good. They were good for a lot of years, but now, no, it's not. They have to find a way to win this game. We'll break it down a little bit more, but you have to stop the run against Stanford. Stanford's actually got a pair of decent running backs. You make him throw the ball, and maybe intercept a pass or 2, and they'll be fine. I think if bottom line is, if Arizona plays a turnover-free game, they should win. It sounds simplistic, but it's true.
We talked about this the other week, Shane. Number 4 is Arizona and Kansas State officially are going to play each of the next 2 years as non-conference games. Yeah. Buy if this is a good idea, or sell if it's a bad one. Now that it's official,
I'll buy that it's a good game on the schedule. So from that perspective, I think it's kind of silly. It doesn't count as a conference game. I mean, I understand why,
Yeah.
but Kansas State's a good team. They just lost to Missouri, but they're typically one of those teams you see ranked or just outside the top 25. And it's a, early battle of the Wildcats. So yeah, it's a little, it's weird, I think is the word for it. It's weird, but I don't mind it. As long as it's a quality opponent and Kansas State is a quality opponent, I'm fine with it.
All right. So here's the issue that I have with it. How many conference games is Arizona scheduled to play in the Big 12 next year? I don't know. I think the answer is 9. I did a little homework. I thought Brett Yormark said it was going to be 9, but I didn't see that confirmed anywhere. So I don't know what that answer is. If the answer is 9 and Kansas State is the equivalent of a 10th conference game, that's terrible. It makes no sense.
I don't know why it has to be that way. I don't know why you can't just make what. I'm sure there's some sort of rule, some sort of legality that's preventing the conference from making that a conference game. But
no, because you can't have more. Everybody has to play the same number of conference games.
I understand, but the schedule hasn't even been made yet, as far as I know.
Well, but see, here's the problem. It's that they can't find another opponent with empty slots. You can find it, and I don't think either team really wants to pay.
But here's a counter to that, Eric, because you remember during the COVID era, there were teams that were basically begging, "Hey, we need someone to play."
Right.
If you can find a way to do it during the pandemic, you can find a way to do it now. I know it's a little bit different now that everyone's back up and running, but and again, I don't like to get into this stuff too much just because I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I don't mind that they're keeping the game. It is kind of silly though that it's a non-conference game.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you wanted to schedule it and then find a non-conference game later in the year, heck, Arizona ended their season. Nick Foles' final game was against Louisiana Lafayette. Yeah, sometimes you have to schedule it like that.
Yeah.
It makes no sense whatsoever that this game is a non-conference game in addition to however many. Now, I would feel a little bit differently if there were only 8 conference games next year, but I have a feeling it's going to be at least 9 because that's what it is now in the Big 12. So you're going to play 10 conference games? That puts you at a disadvantage. This is a team that's trying to make it to a bowl game to get that extra revenue. And by the way, it's an extra road game next year. Schedule, and I've ripped the non-conference schedule, but I guess you're not really winning. You're just trying to get to a bowl game and show improvement. I maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't love it.
I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, but I would imagine that Arizona would have 5 of 9 conference games at home because they are playing ASU at home next year. So I would imagine that the same concept would apply in the Big 12. But then if you have Kansas State in there, then essentially you have 5 home games and 5 road games in the Big 12. One doesn't count toward the Big 12 record.
And I believe the other non-conference games for Arizona next year are NAU again and New Mexico. So I may be skipping a game or two. I mean, I'm not sure it's necessary to drive down for an 8:00 kickoff on ESPN Plus. Hopefully there are earlier kickoffs from somehow, but I doubt it.
You drove down for the UTEP game. Why wouldn't you drive down for the New Mexico
Because I'm
game?
getting older, Shane. I can't. No, I'm not going there. All right, I don't want to get more heat on our comments page.
Just leave at halftime, Eric.
Sorry, I'll just pass on that. I will never do that. All right, bonus question. So the Pac-12 actually did something right in its final year of existence in scheduling Arizona to host UCLA in January 2024 in basketball. Are you surprised, buy or sell?
I am surprised by the Pac-12's competence and good decision making as they go out. Yes, part of me kind of wishes that the last home game against UCLA was the last one, just because they won it. So it's like you go out and know that you beat them in the last game. But yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to have them play at least 2 more times next season, and there's always a chance that they could meet for a 3rd time as well. So yeah, no, I love it. It's I know you probably don't because it's another hard game. I know you don't like when Arizona plays hard games, but I think it was a great move. And whenever UCLA comes to Tucson, it really is a shame that rivalry's ending because it always has a big game feel regardless of the rankings.
Arizona's last 4 games in December are Wisconsin at home. I believe it's Purdue in Indianapolis. It's Alabama and Phoenix, and then Florida Atlantic and Vegas. And then 3 weeks later, you're getting UCLA at home. I mean, if Arizona doesn't have the toughest schedule in the country, honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know who does.
You could make an argument, though, that USC is going to be a tougher game than the UCLA. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's fine. But you know what? I'm glad that they got this right. That the Pac-12. I mean, listen, this game is going to be on it's going to be on ESPN or something like. I mean, it's going to be
call it. Yeah.
Right, and it's going to be epic. And I enjoyed that game last year, and I'm going to try to get tickets and go down again this year. This is a great move by the conference for once, and we haven't been able to say that in a long time, Shane. So good job, Pac-12. For once, and I mean once.
Everything's going right for the Pac-12 as it marches slowly towards its demise. Isn't that just perfect in every way?
Coming up next, let's talk to our favorite college football analyst, Barrett Baker, who is going to give us his thoughts on starting Pac-12 play, and then we'll make some picks in the third segment where he did actually pretty darn good a few weeks ago here in Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? It's Robbie G, baby, and I am gearing up for a big year with Coach Jedd Fisch and excited to see what the Arizona Wildcats do this football season. And just like the football team, we stepped up our program as well with the official licensed U of A Ice Shaker, baby. Check it out and get it at fanatics.com. Bear down, Arizona. Let's go.
Well, he's back on short notice, and we're always glad to have him. Barrett Baker, former special teams captain, and he is, I call him a captain, lieutenant in the Tucson Fire Department. No, I'll never get it right. We know that, but hey, we're always appreciative to have you on the show. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, and by the way, you did not embarrass yourself in picks. You went 7-3 a couple weeks ago, so we'll have you on in the third segment. But I'm going to start with this one, Barrett, and it's not Arizona related, but got on some email chains with my work at CBS Sports, and the email chains basically said that if Deion Sanders had taken over at Colorado last year, the Pac-12 would still be going forward in the future and would have gotten a TV deal. Do you personally believe that?
I think that you could probably make a case for that because, I mean, what is he doing to college football? He is the guy right now, and everyone's talking about him. And any publicity is good publicity. And the Colorado, and then because of that, the Pac-12 is relevant. And to second that, the Pac-12 has gotten off to a good start this year as well. So I think that you could make a case that that's true, and it doesn't change anything though. So I guess it's speculation and it's conjecture. But what else do we do sometimes?
Considering the insane numbers that what Colorado State did, you could absolutely be right about that. It's I mean, what you like them or not, it's incredible what's happening in Boulder. All right, so Barrett, we're a quarter of the way into the season. Jedd Fisch says he likes to break the season down into quarters. Quarter number 1 is over. Give us your overall state of the program and some big, maybe a couple big takeaways from the first 3 games of the season.
I think we're where we expected to be record-wise, and you're just so close to having that additional win on the road against Mississippi State, which I think a lot of us thought that we could get that win. And honestly, it just, 3 plays out of 100 that if they go a different way, that you're undefeated and really feeling good about the direction of the team. I don't think there's any question that this is the best team that we've had under Coach Fisch. I've been most pleasantly surprised by the defense, and that was the goal coming into the season. They said if we could have a jump the way we did offensively between years 1 and 2 and go from that 120th to a respectable offense, which we really did, made a huge jump when Delora came on board, and then do the same thing on defense. Defense has not been a word that we're familiar with over the last 10 years of Arizona football. We've been, and Coach Nansen, I will tell you, I was not real pleased, and I didn't know what our vision was or what our identity was last year in his first year, but they went heavy into the transfer portal, and you've got to like the results so far. We're playing defense. We're holding teams. We're getting some stops. So I think we're a much more balanced team, and we're not putting it all on the offense. That being said, I think that offensively we haven't clicked yet. We haven't had that perfect game, and we're still winning, and we're putting points on the board, and we're moving up and down the field. But when you have that holding penalty that makes it 1st and 20, when you have that fumble, when you have the missed field goal or the blocked field goal, those ultimately just kill the momentum of the game. And I think we really saw that last week, especially against UTEP, where out of 4 series, We had 7 points, even though it seemed like we were moving the ball at will.
Yeah, and Eric and I talked about it in the first segment. Look at the yards and the turnovers, or even lack thereof. Arizona really should have scored more than 31 points. So along those lines, Barrett, let me ask you about the offensive line, because it sounds like for the first time all season they might be whole, albeit with a freshman starter in Raymond Polito, who's finally cleared to play. What would that mean for Arizona's offense going forward?
I just the continuity and putting the front five in their best positions. And the left side has done great. Center has been obviously for 3 or 4 years now with Baker. They like what they see with Jonah at right tackle and that right guard position. Listen, Leif Magnuson, he played fantastic last week when he got the opportunity to do that. But to have 5 guys and your top 5 that are all the number one, so to speak, that should do something. And I'm excited that they get one game here with Stanford that I feel like we should win that game, obviously, to work out a few of the kinks. But if they think that Jonah's better at right tackle compared to right guard, then that's great. But it did give Borjan an opportunity to get some real playing time with snaps when they mattered. We did get to see some platooning at right guard. And that helps with the depth, because now we actually know that we can go, 7, 8 deep at the offensive line and not have a huge drop off. The running, the offensive line production when it comes to rushing the ball, I think I'm missing a little bit with that, but I feel like they've done a great job in regards to pass protection. So if Polito can get in there and maybe just, make a few more run blocks, spring a few more guys, then I think that we're on the path to success there.
Let's talk about Jaden DeLaura. And, Shane and I discussed this last week. We probably, if we were coaching, would have benched him in the first half against Mississippi State when he was just throwing the ball to the other team, more so than he was throwing it to Arizona's receivers. Number one, would you have benched him if you were coaching? Number two, what is your outlook the rest of the season on DeLaura, and has it changed?
Well, I feel like we've had the same conversation, honestly, going back, 15 games at this point. He's maddeningly lovable and maddeningly hateable. And, obviously we never use the word hate, but we've talked about it so often. He makes plays sometimes that are so frustrating. And then the next time he makes a play that not many guys can make. So I think we're constantly going for that consistency. But at the end of the day, he is what he is. And, Coach Fish, obviously, and Coach Doherty, they work with him. So the quick release and all of those things that he's able to do, fantastic. I'll tell you, the Mississippi State, one of the passes I thought was the last one for that matter. That's pass interference, judgment call, but that guy was over the back of Cowing, and then it's a horrible deflection that goes right to a guy. That should be an interception, incompletion. Another time, Coach Fish basically said, hey, we should have motioned a guy. We didn't. That put 2 guys in the same zone, and you can never have one guy covering 2 receivers. So that was a mistake. Those are fixable things. So I don't hate the mistakes that he's making. I don't feel like he's making horrible reads. I think sometimes he thinks that he can fit it into this window when it needs to be in this window. And sometimes it's 6 inches. Sometimes it's a yard is the difference between a touchdown, an incompletion, and an interception. And early in the season, or in that first quarter, 3 interceptions. But I'll tell you what, we're not in that game in the fourth quarter and overtime in the same vein if he's not the guy behind center.
That's fair. He made a great rally in the second half. He did it, he turned it around. Now, I wouldn't have kept him in the game. I would have gone to Fafita. I mean, at some point, you got to put the kid in there and let's see what he can do. But good for Jed. He stuck with him. So be it. All right. I asked Shane this earlier in the first segment. Is this week against Stanford a must win?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're better than Stanford. We're a better program than Stanford. And it's time to, what do we say? Lose big year 1, lose small year 2, win small year 3, and then hopefully next year we really take off. But we're a good team. And when you're a good team, you beat teams that you're better than. And we're better than Stanford. And you just have to put that on record. You have to go show America that we've arrived. And there's no reason, considering Stanford, what they've shown so far, that we shouldn't win. We've got a couple games of tape on them now with a new coach. Obviously a very, very different speed that they play with offensively compared to the Shaw Stanford teams. But no, we're better than them. We're better on both sides of the ball. And I need us to show for 4 quarters. I would like us to put it together. The great unknown to me, I would say this to both of you. I feel like something's been missing on offense, and I don't know exactly what it is. Again, it's the ill-timed penalty. It's the ill-timed turnover. It's maybe not as many explosive plays as that we had last year. But what happens when we get to that gauntlet, right? After Stanford, it gets real. So you've got to get this win and come out healthy. And then it really becomes, okay, what's this season going to turn out to be?
Stanford, for all their faults, I mean, they just paid Sacramento State almost $750,000 to beat them. But they do have a decent running game. They have 2 running backs who are average over 7 yards a carry. If you're Johnny Nansen, how do you go about attacking this offense? Do you dare Stanford to beat you in the passing game?
Well, I think we've shown right now that we're so solid against the rush, right? With Manoa and Big Bill Norton, Kongaika, Tai. I mean, we've got a great rotation up front. And then Manu is just as steady as could be. I think leading the Pac-12 in tackles. Flo came in, and I'll tell you what, against the rush, he is what we expected, right? He's a violent tackler that gets to the ball with bad intentions. We also saw the worst of him, I think, with the busted coverage, and that's the challenge with him right now. But against the rush, I don't think that Stanford ultimately can beat us up front. So if you can make any offense one-dimensional, then you're ahead of the game. And I just don't see based off what we've seen for the first 3 games, that they're going to have a success against us and put a lot of points on the board.
Barrett, my last question for you. No interceptions for Arizona. No on the defensive side of the ball through the first 3 games. They have 3 forced fumbles or fumble recoveries, no interceptions. Is that a concern or an anomaly? Do you expect that number to change in the near future?
So I would say this, Coach Fish was adamant when he hired Coach Nansen that was the reason that we hired him, and that we needed to get better at forcing turnovers, that he was obviously displeased, if I could use that term, under Coach Brown, that we did not force enough turnovers. And so that was a real emphasis. And they talked about that in the offseason and Coach Nansen's first season. How many turnovers are we forcing? Now, the flip side of that is that this is the best defense that we played in a long time. So we're not getting turnovers, but we're getting stops. And at the end of the day, I don't care. If we can make a team go 3 and out, or not score points against us, that's just as good as a turnover. So 3 and out and punting, I have no problem of that compared to forcing a turnover. The Achilles heel, I still think, to this defense right now is that we're still not getting to the quarterback as consistently as we would like out of the base package. So Ward has the bend, and he's got a lot of potential. And Upshaw, I mean, he's gotten to the quarterback a couple times. They're getting close, and we've got to get some pressure. We've got to get some wins out of that front 4, out of the base package, without having to blitz. And once we do that, if we can get some of that pressure up front, then that will start leading to turnovers. When you can force a quarterback to throw early or off his spot, that's when you get the bad decisions. That's when you get the turnovers. And we just haven't been able to do that quite yet.
Now, we're going to make our picks for the Stanford game and other games in the next segment. But assuming this week is a win, and we're going to give Arizona a win just because we have to over ASU, there would be 4 right there. Now, Arizona needs at least 6 to get to bowl eligibility. There are 4 home games left: Washington, Oregon State, UCLA, Utah, and we'll throw in the road game at Colorado. I don't feel good about at USC, and I don't feel great at Washington State right now. Find me the 2 wins based on those games.
It's hard because you could almost flip a coin. I honestly believe that. I think that, and we talked about this last time we were on the show, I don't think a lot of teams want to play us, quite frankly. So when you look at Oregon State, and you look at UCLA, and you look at Washington, and it's like, oh man, we don't want to play those. Well, they don't want to play us. And I think that's the thing, is if we believe and we execute for 4 quarters, then I think that we beat UCLA. If we play well against Oregon State, I think that that's a possibility. They're a well-coached team, and Smith has done a great job changing that program. But Utah, it's a little bit of an unknown because they still don't have Cam Rising. But I don't think they're. I mean, even Washington last year, did we lose by 10 points?
Mm-hmm.
On the road.
Very questionable call as pass interference or holding call late in that game.
Yeah. Now they've obviously their offense and DeBoer has them really clicking, and Penix is unreal. But guess what? We're better than we were last year. We play them at home, and we only lost by 10 points last year. So I don't see that there is a game outside of USC where obviously talent-wise, they've got all the 5 stars. But there's not a game this year where I'm like, oh my gosh, we're outmatched. And I think that the improved defense really lends itself to give me more confidence in that. I don't think we're going to have to outscore teams, 55-53 to win some games this year. So there's some wins out there. Colorado, listen, they're again 3-0, and we'll know a lot more about their wins at the end of the season than we do right now. We don't know about Colorado State. We don't know about Nebraska, and we really don't know what TCU is. So give them credit for winning because that's what you're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, what if that's their only three wins of the season? I don't think that will be the case, but they've shown that they're not invincible. Colorado State beat them for 59 minutes, and so they'll come down. They're obviously the talk of the town right now, but they'll get knocked down a few notches, and I think that we'll probably take care of business against them as well.
In advance of our picks in the next segment, just one little gambling tidbit based on something that Barrett just said. In all 3 of Arizona's games this season, the total has gone under the projected Vegas line. The line this week is 59.5. I'm picking the under. Let's see if Shane and Barrett will agree with me coming up next year on Wildcat Country. All right, Shane, it was not a good week for you last week in the picks. 2-7. Our guest, Alan Bell, my colleague at Sportsline, 5-4, and I went 7-2.
So much for doing research. Yeah, you know what? This week's picks, I pride myself. I have done no research. I'm going straight from the gut, and if that doesn't work, I am bringing my 4-year-old on next week to make picks because he can't do any worse than I can.
In week 2, Barrett went 7-3-1 and outpicked the both of us. Now, yep. Shane, I'm up 8 games on you and 3 games on our guest pickers. So let's see if Barrett can narrow the gap here. We have a great slate of games this week. So let's run them down. I think we have 10 games to pick. We'll go quickly. Florida State is a 2.5-point favorite at Clemson. Shane, I'll let you start with this one.
I'm still a Florida State believer. Clemson hasn't looked apart this year. I'm going to take Florida. I know they had a rough game at Boston College. I think they learned from that. They have their head on a swivel at Clemson. I think they find a way to cover.
Barrett?
I'm going to actually do the opposite of that because I think the heat is on Dabo and Clemson. They've obviously underwhelmed a little bit this year, and this will be the game that they finally say, okay, we're Clemson. Florida State's fit for an upset. I'm going to take Clemson on that one.
This may be a sucker bet, but I think Florida State was caught looking ahead to Clemson last week. I think they show up this week. I think the game is close. I could see it being a 3 to 6 point spread, but I think Florida State edges one out. So I'm going with Shane on this one. Not sure that's a good idea, Barrett, but I'm going with Shane on this one and taking Florida State. All right, next game, battle of top 25 teams as well. Ole Miss is a 7-point underdog at Alabama. Lane Kiffin in his career against Nick Saban, 3-1 against the spread. I think Ole Miss keeps it close but loses somewhere in the 28-24 range. Barrett, what do you think?
I think Alabama, for the first time and as long as I can remember, doesn't have that quarterback that is leading them the way we're used to seeing. Until they find that, I don't really believe in them. And I'm going to go with Ole Miss on that one.
Shane?
I'm going to go against both you guys, which is probably not a good idea considering recent history. But I think Milrose back in a quarterback just by they don't have another option at this point. But they're at home. They're playing. I got to believe they're going to find a way to cover. They're still Alabama.
The game I'm looking forward to most that's not Arizona's game this weekend. Ohio State is a 3-point favorite at Notre Dame. I think this one's close. Once again, I mean, I could see this one being a push, but I like Ohio State to win a close one. Shane, how about you?
I agree with you. I think Ohio State's the better team. I don't think home field's going to matter that much. Ohio State, Michigan will likely be for a college football playoff spot. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes to cover.
Barrett?
It's just so hard early in the season when it comes to these. I just don't know enough to where, you could really say one way or the other. So I think Ohio State is, from a coaching standpoint, their system is still more intact than what the coach is trying to do it at Notre Dame, and they're still learning how to win. So it's Ohio State for me.
The last one that is not involving a Pac-12 team, Iowa's going up to the whiteout in Penn State as at night game. Penn State is favored by 14.5. Barrett, I'll start with you. Is that too many points for Iowa to be getting at Penn State?
No, because I still don't know if I'm a huge believer in Iowa's offense. I mean, they've just been, their defense has scored more points than their offense. Of course, that's not true, but until they disprove that, I don't think that they're going to score enough points. So I would go with Penn State on that one.
Shane.
Well, the problem is an Iowa blowout, as in Iowa getting blown out, could look like a 20-10 kind of score.
Right.
That's the problem. That's the thing with giving them that many points. So I think Penn State could win handily, so to speak, and still only win by 10 or so. So I'm going to take Iowa to cover.
Boy, Shane, you and I are agreeing way too much this week. I have Penn State by 10. I think Iowa's offense is better than we've seen in recent years. I think they find a way to score, maybe put some Penn State fans, get them a little bit nervous. So I'm going with Iowa to cover. Now we get on to the 6 Pac-12 games, and there are some doozies this week. Arizona-Stanford is the undercard, but we'll go last just because it's the game that we want to talk about. But all right, let's start with Oregon State is a 2.5-point road favorite at Washington State. Shane, I'll start with you. Who do you have there?
This is a tough one. I mean, Washington State's better than I expected. Oregon State even is a bit better than I expected. Oregon State didn't look as impressive offensively as I thought they would last week. I'm just going to go straight up with the home team here. I think Oregon State's a bit better, but I think the Cougars, they're at home. I think they find a way to at least cover, if not win outright.
Barrett?
No one has shown that Washington State is beatable yet. I mean, they've just been playing good on both sides of the ball, and I think they believe. And so I'm going to go with Washington State, the Palouse Posse.
By the way, we're going to call this the Pac-2 championship.
Yeah.
They're talking about keeping a Pac-2 next year. I just read that today.
Insane.
How is this even a thing?
Well, hey, winner, they play each other 12 times, and whoever wins 7 out of 12 goes to the Rose Bowl, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you who's going to win on Saturday, and it's Washington State at home. Oregon State's actually really good. Shane, I thought you nailed it right there. I think Oregon State's really good. Washington State, super impressive at home. We'll see what they do on the road. I mean, they pasted Colorado State in game 1. You saw what Colorado State did last week against the Buffaloes, but I'm going to roll with Washington State to win this game outright. Now, a game that I am passionate about, Colorado at Oregon, and the Ducks are giving 20.5 points, so just short of 3 touchdowns. Barrett, I'll start with you. Can Colorado, without Travis Hunter and the cheap shot that he took last week, can they keep it close against the Ducks?
I think Colorado State probably provided the blueprint for, how do you beat Colorado? Because, again, they did it for 59 minutes. So now that Colorado has a few weaknesses, and, again, to lose your best player, listen, these coaches are very, very good at finding weaknesses and exploiting them. So I think that Oregon's going to do that, and we'll kind of see that, again, Colorado is still a team that won 1 game this year, and you can only change things, so much. So I'm expecting Oregon to win that one, okay, even Shane, with that spread.
With the points, with the points. Yep. Shane?
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty simple for me. This is the best offense Colorado's faced so far and the best defense they've faced so far. And they're going to be on the road in one of the most hostile environments in the country. Yes. I think Colorado maybe finds a way to keep it close for 3 quarters, maybe within 1 or 2 scores. But I think Oregon busts it open at some point, and I think they cover.
I disagree with you, Shane, in that I don't think they keep it close for 3 quarters. In 8 combined home games last year and this year, Oregon has 7-1 straight up and against the spread. And they are average in the 7 wins. They're average beating their opponents by 33 points a game. Colorado does not stand a chance. I think my score of 45-17 Oregon, maybe even closer than it should be. I could see Oregon getting closer to 60. Oregon, big. The Dion hype, down. And next week, they're going to get spanked by USC at home. And I'm here for it. All right. UCLA at Utah. Utah is a 4.5-point favorite. Now, I think Cam Rising will be back for this game. I'll give you guys a stat before you guys make your picks. Utah has won 16 straight home games. And in 14 of those games, they've won by double digits. Will they cover the 4.5? Shane, what do you think?
I've been going back and forth on this. And yeah, all logic suggests that Utah finds a way to win and cover, but I feel like the wheels are going to come off at some point for Utah, and that game against Baylor still sticks in my head. Again, they easily could have lost. I know Cam Rising's back. It's debatable whether that's a huge improvement for them on the offensive side of the ball. So I against all logic, I'm telling you, I'm going to my gut this week, right? My gut is saying UCLA actually might go in and find a way to win that game against all logic and against the history you just mentioned. So I'm going to go with the Bruins.
All right, Barrett.
Utah is off this year, and it could be Rising, but I don't feel in watching a few of the games that they are what we've come to know for the last 10 years. And so until they start showing that dominance, listen, UCLA, they're always explosive, new quarterback, but that system's tough to defend, and I'll go for the upset with UCLA.
Wow, I'm shocked, guys. I'll tell you what, I think Utah at home is a different animal. Love them this week. -4.5. Think they win the game by double digits. So we really disagree on this one. All right, 3 more to go. Cal at Washington. Quick one here. We know the Huskies are going to win, but they're favored by 3 touchdowns, 21 points. I think Washington covers. They win the game by 24, pull away in the fourth quarter. Barrett, what do you think?
Wilcox always has Cal. They know how to play defense there. And I just wonder if they can get the run game established enough to keep the ball out of the Washington offense. I think that they can. And so 21, that's a lot of points, but I'll go with California to not lose by 22. Yep.
Yeah. Shane?
Yeah, it kind of feels like maybe a backdoor cover for Cal, but I think I'm just such a huge believer in Washington and Michael Penix. I'm hoping that, Washington's going to win. Obviously, we hope Arizona wins, so that makes it an even bigger deal in Arizona Stadium the following week. But I'm going to keep rolling with Washington, and I should have taken him last week. I thought Michigan State was going to cover. Boy, was I off on that. So I'm going to go with the Huskies to cover this week.
This is a line I never thought I'd see. I don't even know what to say about it. USC is a 34-point road favorite at ASU. Shane, I'm going to start with you. Honestly, I've gone back and forth on this one. Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, that's tough. And ASU keeps burning me because I picked them to cover the last 2 weeks. And
didn't go so well for you last week, did it?
It did not. And
they're really bad.
They're really bad. I feel, their offensive line, it doesn't matter who you put behind center. You could put the Manning, Arch Manning back there right now. It wouldn't matter if he doesn't have time to throw. But with that said, ASU's at home. I just can't take USC to cover at whatever they're calling that stadium now in Tempe. So I think USC rolls, but I think ASU finds a way to cover the 34 points.
Barrett?
34 points is so many points. It's hard to say that one team is 5 touchdowns better than somebody else, but I think they are. I think, if ASU's talking about maybe starting Conover, that's a 4th-string quarterback. They're so depleted on offense and defense. And this is a brand new coach, and they don't know how to win under him yet. They don't know what they are. So it's a recipe. I would never say that I feel bad for ASU, ever. So I'm just going to enjoy the 34-point win for USC.
And so we knew Barrett was going to take the points with the Trojans. And finally, Arizona right now, we're going to give the line is 11.5. This one's moved all over the place. Started in the 9s, got up to 12. We're going to give Arizona -11.5. I'm actually going to start with this one, and then I'll go to Barrett, then Shane. I actually think Stanford is going to keep this game closer than they should. We don't know what Arizona is going to do, I guess, on the road away from home. They played well in Starkville, but really, how good is Mississippi State? I was not impressed with what I saw last week against LSU. I think Arizona wins this game. I don't think it's comfortable. I think it's lower scoring than we'd like. Wildcats 31, Cardinal 23, so they don't cover. All right, Barrett, give us a score prediction and why.
We've got to put it together. We've got 3 games now under our belt that we've technically worked out the kinks. And I think that we play a clean game tomorrow, or on Saturday, excuse me. So if we play that clean game and just eliminate those dumb penalties and turnovers, the potential is there, I think, to win like a 41-10 type.
Wow. Okay. Shane, I'll let you have the last word on this particular game.
Would love to see it. By the way, Eric, did you make your pick on the ASU USC game? Were you taking USC?
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. You're good point on that. I'm taking ASU with the points. I think 34 is too many. I think they lose by close to 4 touctouchdowns. But yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Shane. Thank you. I totally forgot about that.
No worries. And as far as the Arizona-Stanford game, I agree with you, Eric. We're green a lot, which again, it might not be good news for you. But I think this has ugly game written all over it. I hope Barrett's right. I just feel like, Arizona's offense just hasn't clicked, and I don't know if it's going to click this weekend. I think, they're going to have the offensive line hold, but that's going to be an adjustment in itself, especially with a freshman coming in, assuming that Polito is going to get the start. I know he's been cleared. Defensively, I'm still not sold on their ability to shut down the run against a good run offense. And we saw what happened in Starkville. I think Arizona finds a way to win, and they better win this game. But I'm taking, like you said, Eric, I'm taking the under, and I'm thinking for whatever reason, I hope this doesn't happen because it's gonna be 4 hours or 3 hours of agony. I'm thinking like 20-19 Arizona. They find a way to grind out.
Wow.
I hope I am wrong.
20 points.
Yeah.
So Barrett's going 41-10. I'm going 31-23, and you're going 20-19.
I like both of your predictions better than mine, and I hope I'm wrong. That number's been ingrained in my head, so like I said, I'm rolling with my gut this week. That's what my gut's telling me.
Another awesome episode of Wildcat Country. Barrett, thank you as always for joining Shane and I. So for Barrett Baker and Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening, and as always, bear down.